Hey y'all, I'm Reese, and welcome to Making Meaning. Making Meaning is a podcast by the Cohere Collective, here to help guide you along your path to make meaning in a way that makes sense for you. This week, I am joined by the wonderful Maya Francis. This is Maya's second episode with Making Meaning, so that makes this a Ouroboros episode, which this is our second Ouroboros episode as well, which is kind of like a mini-series inside of Making Meaning when we have return guests that get to come back and update us on their meaning-making journey, how it's been going, how it's changed, how they have changed. All of that really good, juicy stuff. Making meaning is an ever-evolving process for all of us, and I want the podcast to reflect that and to grow as all of us grow together. And so I think that having return guests come back and talk about different things, but also similar things, and maybe how they've changed their mind about things, is a really great way to reflect the ever-evolving journey of being a human being. So I hope y'all are enjoying these return guests as much as I'm enjoying having conversations with them. In this episode, Maya and I pretty much do just that, where we return to her story and what she's been up to. This last year for her has been one of a lot of personal growth. So I hope you're excited to jump into it. I am really excited to share it with you. And if you are watching on YouTube, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Please leave this video a like, give me a comment down below if you are so inclined, and let me know what your last year has been like. How have you changed? Has your mind been changed about anything? Let me know in the comments. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please subscribe to the podcast and leave us a review and rating. I would really appreciate that. I always love hearing everyone's thoughts about the episode. It's so wonderful and lovely. So thank you to everyone that leaves thoughts and ratings and reviews. I so appreciate it. I think that is all that I have before we jump into it. So, as always, I would like everyone to take a moment and let's all take a deep breath together. Breathe in and out. And let's get started. Ooh, that was good. Cheers.
To Ouroboros.
To Ouroboros. I love that.
Last time we had what?
We just had like seltzers.
White Claws?
Yeah.
This time we're going.
It's 1 PM, so we're doing soda.
Also, we both did have a bottle of wine last night.
That is also true.
So,
hey, you know what? A big part of making meaning is also having fun. Mm-hmm. And I've always said that.
And that's exactly what we did. Hey, we had fun.
We had fun.
And we lived and we laughed.
We did laugh.
And we loved. And we learned, honestly. We learned, too.
I'm gonna cry already.
Alright, guys, that's the end of my podcast.
Cool. Yeah, bye. You're gone. Done. Okay. Well, Maya, welcome back. Hey. For any new listeners, this is our second episode of Maya being on Making Meaning, so it's her Ouroboros episode. Which
am I saying that wrong?
I believe it's Ouroboros, but I've also heard people say Ouroboros, so I think it's one of those things that's like...
Tomato.
Yeah, exactly. So this is Maya's second episode, and our first one, like you just said, we had seltzers, so we felt as though we had to start the podcast with cracking open a cold one, even if it's just a soda this time.
True.
But we're gonna kick it off with the first question I always ask, which is, what's one thing you're grateful for right now?
Oh my goodness. So many things to be grateful for. I don't know. Well, obviously you already know what I'm gonna answer because last night was so fun. We had a girl sleepover and it was just it was just such good vibes. We watched the last Trolls movie.
Yes.
If
Fan
anyone
together.
is a Trolls fan, I highly recommend watching the last movie.
Let us know in the comments down below.
Yes. Also, let us know if you are a Trolls or a Sing fan. Okay. Because we have some riffs in our friend group about which one is better.
And Rift is, like it's kind of tearing the friend group apart.
Yeah. Like, we honestly, like, might not be friends in the next year. Check back in for the next Ouroboros podcast in the year. Where we're not friends with anyone anymore, just because
we'll update you on who's Team Trolls and who is Team Sing.
Yeah, so. And let us know in the comments. Post it on Instagram. Tag Cohere Collective in your stories about whether you like Trolls or Sing.
Yes, please do. I want to know. It'll be like really good data for us to collect. I think it'll be an important piece of like human anthropology that we can look back on.
It's exactly what I was gonna say. Like, it's something in the future where, like, if people like dug like one of those time capsules up, like that would be like
they'll
part
find
of
the Cohere
data.
Collective like Instagram and be like, oh my gosh, the religion of Trolls versus the religion of Sing, and it's like cave drawings but of right now.
So that's basically just what happened like hundreds of thousands of years ago. That's exactly what.
Exactly, but
but
you know what that is? An Ouroboros.
Dude, you're so right about that.
Thanks.
And I'm not gonna say Ouroboros. I'm only gonna say Ouroboros.
Hey, you know what? I think that's allowed, and I appreciate you showing up authentically as who you are.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyways, segue. We watched Trolls band together.
Yes, we did. And so, yes, what you're grateful for.
Yes. And we also watched Monte Carlo, and then we played some card games, and we were just having fun. And then we FaceTimed our guy friends, who are all on a bachelor's trip in Nashville right now. And it was just so silly because, I don't know, there are sometimes where I look at my friends and I'm like, why are we friends? Like, we are all such different people in, like, such inherently different ways. And sometimes I get confused because it's like, oh, how could we all come together? But then there are moments like yesterday where the 5 of us girls, we were all piled on top of each other, just like being silly and like on FaceTime with the guys, and then all 5 of them piled on top of each other
on the bed and FaceTiming us.
Yeah, FaceTiming us, and like they were all laughing, like, and we were all laughing, and it was just so like silly, and it was pure joy. And
it literally was pure joy.
And like most of us got headaches because of how hard we were laughing.
Yeah.
Not because of the wine we drank, but because of the laughing.
Yeah, definitely not because of that.
But because of the laughing. And that was just so fun and so amazing. Yeah. So I think grateful for, and honestly, maybe I said this, it was the same thing at last podcast.
But I think that's really poignant.
Yeah, but that's goes to show that I'm always grateful for my friendships, but more so just knowing that a bunch of different people can come together. You may have a few interests aligned, you may not, but at the end of the day, like, if your friendship ascends that, then that's, like I said, pure joy.
Yeah.
That's how you feel. And that was how I felt yesterday.
Find that beyond difference is really powerful. Not to say that the difference isn't important too, and like honoring that and recognizing that, but also finding joy amongst similarities is something that is really powerful and beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that.
And I think that's something, I mean, honestly, a lot of people struggle with that because, I mean, you have like relationships where people have different wants, different needs, different
beliefs, worldviews, paths.
Yeah, different everything. Yeah. And for some people, they have no problems with that. They are just, I'll do it my way, you do it your way, we'll come together and we'll figure it out. Other people have a really hard time getting past that.
Yeah.
I've never been in a relationship, so I can't say that, like, I would or what I've done, but if I would be with someone who had, you know, different whatever beliefs, I would like to think that I would be one of the ones who is okay with that and can live with that, just because I already live with that in my entire life.
Right.
Like, all of my friendships, most of the people that I love and hold so dearly to my heart have so many different beliefs and different likes and everything, you know? So.
Yeah. One thing that I do want to, because I haven't even asked the normal second question yet, but I think that this is really important. So I want to continue down this train of thought for a little bit, because I think that is something that I struggle with, is the balance between being really okay with loving people and being really close to people that have different, not even just interests, but like truly like belief systems than I do, and still being able to love them, find joy with them, really value that relationship, but then also knowing that there are these things that are very important to me that we do not align on, and wanting to be someone who can look beyond that and still have a relationship is very important to me. But at the same time, there are certain values and beliefs that for me are non-negotiable in certain ways, where like, for example, like feminism, we'll just use that. Oh my gosh. No, Maya's making fun of me. But we both consider ourselves feminists. I would not be able to be in a relationship with someone who didn't consider themselves a feminist. Yeah. However, I have friends that don't consider themselves feminists, and that is something I struggle with, in that, like, I still love these people. I still find a lot of joy with them. We still have really meaningful connections and share other things, but that is something that I think about. And, like, of course, that's just one example of a belief or a value, and, like, I don't think one thing is a reason to not, you know, still be able to hold a deep relationship with someone.
It depends on how big.
You hear what I'm saying?
Yes. It also depends on how big that one thing is, because it really could be something like, another example, racism. Like, if someone, that is one thing, but if someone is inherently racist and isn't, an example would be like, if someone is inherently racist, they aren't racist to you, but they say racist things about other people, or maybe just like in passing, and they're just racist to others. Yeah. That's maybe... Even
ignorantly, right?
Yeah, that's maybe... Well, not maybe, at least for me, that's something where that would be one thing where I couldn't get past, because my identity revolves around the fact that I'm not white. Yeah. So it's like, hey, that's... Well, we're not gonna do that, you know? So there's sometimes where I'm like, okay, maybe there's one thing where everyone has their own prerogative, you know? Like, it depends on how you feel about it, but I agree with you for the most part. Like, you gotta work past the differences, but also I feel like for us, at least with our friend group, we have all of these differences and we are aware of that, but we don't really talk about it. Like, we are never... I think it works so well for us because we never get into those difficult conversations, because I think we all know in the back of our minds that we probably wouldn't be friends if we truly dug deep into who we are as people.
To me, is deeply problematic, actually. Because I think you're 100% right that with a lot of people that are like some of my closest people, if we did actually get into that, there would be things that are non-negotiables for me, right?
Yeah.
And
it would be hard to look at them the same way.
Well, even... Right. And so that is something that I think about a lot in terms of, like, knowing who I am as a person, and that my values and, like, literal belief system about making meaning is entrenched in digging deep, right? And, like...
Whoa, entrenched, digging deep. That was good.
Language. But it's like, am I then not, like, practicing what I preach by not doing that? And by letting, not kind of putting my head in the sand, because it's like, it's something I'm aware of, but, like, this one area of my life not being something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. How do you come to terms with loving people and letting other people love you that you know aren't aligned with you in that way? How do you handle that?
I feel like a lot of it genuinely, unfortunately, is looking past the differences and, like I said, not having those conversations with people unless I feel like it's really necessary.
Yeah.
Like, if it gets to a point where this person is, you know, like, blatantly saying things to my face that I don't agree with, then I would have issues with that and I would go about it like that. But for the most part, I feel like when I hear someone say something that doesn't align with my beliefs, I'll say something to them then. You know me, I'm a pretty outspoken person. I don't shy back from confrontation. That's not me. But I do know when to hold my tongue.
Yeah.
And there are just sometimes where, I don't know, maybe I'm too tired to get into a fight, or at some point also it can be exhausting to always have to defend your ground and to fight what you stand for, which I mean is exactly what we should be doing, you know, fight the good fight. I'm 100% for that, but at the same time it's very taxing.
Yeah, well, you got to take care of yourself in order to be able to do that. Totally.
Yeah, 100%. And also a big part of it for me is that I know that person's probably so set in that mindset and in their beliefs, because obviously that's their belief system.
Right.
Why would they not be? You wouldn't call it your belief system if you weren't.
Right.
So anything that I say wouldn't change their mind anyway. Or, I mean, it could, but it just depends on the person. Like, you know, sometimes you can tell the person you're talking to just gonna go, whoop.
Yeah.
It really just depends on the situation.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I don't know. I definitely make my thoughts and my opinions and my voice and everything known.
Yeah.
Like, everyone knows how I feel about everything. And I openly talk about things, and if someone wants to come up to me and, like, ask me a question or, like, say something to that, I'm totally down for that. But I've never, like, gotten into, like, a bad conversation with someone because of that.
And I do think that something that's really important is, like, the concept of love. It's like, just even if someone does not, in my viewpoint, love other people the way we might love someone else, right?
Yeah.
For whatever reason, that does not mean that person is now unworthy of love and of themselves, right? Just because someone else may not be the most loving doesn't mean that you are ever unworthy of love. So still being able to, like, hold that relationship, I think, is really important, while, like, recognizing that there may be some growth, but it's, like, also it's just complicated and hard. But I do think it's almost like there's this line between trying to be as loving as possible that dips into, like, allowing. And I think the thing for me that I think about is, like, anyone that I'm friends with, but especially a significant other, which both of us are single right now, but I think it's more true of a significant other that you're, like, building a life with. But even with friends and stuff, it's like, when you have a deep relationship with someone, it is communicating, at least I believe that communicates to the rest of the world, I have my stamp of approval on this person. And so it's kind of, that is one thing for me that's like, well, if I espouse this one belief, but this person that I love, that everyone knows that I'm so, like, intimately connected with, does not share that belief, is that hypocritical? Or is that trying to love people well?
Oof.
What do you think? It's complex and gray, of course.
100%, yeah. Like, literally everything in this world.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, I genuinely think that it's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
At least that's how I would feel. It's a little bit of both, because obviously, like I said, I try not to be judgmental, unless you're a really bad person, then I'm gonna be like, hey, I don't want anything to do with you.
Fair enough.
Exactly. But for the most part, I would say that I think that's loving someone despite, you know, their ailments and their odds and yada, yada, yada. But I think it becomes hypocritical if you don't try to at least help the person get some knowledge about some stuff, like about the other side or whatever.
Yeah.
I think there are ways that you can have, like, an open, honest relationship or friendship or whatever with someone who is completely different with you, as long as, you know, you're not both either headstrong people, like two headstrong people being, like, you know, constantly bickering about that and just, like, being able to have a normal conversation with someone.
Yeah.
I think that's hard. People are very passionate. Obviously, I'm a very passionate person. Hands down. Literally, we played that game yesterday. It's like Stir the Pot, where you pull a card and then you have to say like the person's name who like you think is the answer to that question, and then there's a coin and you flip it and it's either like tell or don't tell, and then you like tell the person like what the question was. And our friend Kate pulled a card and she said Maya, 1000% Maya immediately. And I was like, what is it? She got tell, and so she told me, and it's who has the worst temper. And I was like, what? That's crazy.
You said me?
I said, who, me? I don't have here's the lowdown. I don't have a bad temper. I'm just a passionate person.
Maya is still thinking about that card. Maya has not let it go. That's so funny.
Kate altered my brain with that one.
Yeah.
No, I'm very, like I said, I'm very passionate about things, and, I think that is both a good thing and can also be a bad thing.
Yeah. Well, it's totally a strength, but I think that even goes back to, like, your greatest strength is often your greatest weakness, too, right? Like, I 100%... I
have not heard that.
Oh, really? I think it was, like, Miss Hart, my acting teacher, coach, life
right, Ms.
mentor...
Hart. Oh, my God, she told me that, yeah.
Shut up. But, like, my favorite person in the world, Miss Hart.
The tattoo, right?
Yes. I have a tattoo of something that Miss Hart told to me the very first day that she met me, because it means so much to me, and she means so much to me. But yes, I remember the first time that she is a very intuitive person, and acting is obviously like a very emotional, process. And the first time we were like talking about like your power and how you bring yourself to your roles, we were talking about this, and she was like, your greatest strength is 100% your greatest weakness. And I was really thinking about, like, well, what would I say my greatest strength is? And I really think it is, like, empathy and being able to, like, really 100%. Step into other people's shoes and, like, think so much about other people first. But that is such a flaw in me, too, in the sense that it's, like, calm down. Like, not even, okay, case in point. Brunch this morning. We got breakfast and we were putting dishes in the little, like, when you clear your table away and you have to put your dishes next to the trash can kind of thing. And there was this man waiting patiently behind us, and he was very kind. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I need to get out of your way. And Maya's like, why are you freaking out? It's okay.
And the guy was like, it's fine. And Reese was like, oh my God, I have to move. And he goes, it's fine. Like, it's okay. And Reese was like, we have to move.
Because just like this idea that I was inconveniencing someone else
so
is
cute.
Like abhorrent to me. But it's like, on one hand, I love that about myself. But on the other hand, that makes life a lot harder for me and for a lot of the people around me too, you know? So it's like, it's both of these things. And so I think with the, like, being really passionate, or even the temper thing, it's like, I don't have a temper at all. And I wish I did. You know, it's like I wish sometimes that I
don't think you should say that you don't have a temper at all. You have emotions.
Maya's like, hang on.
No, but I'm saying, when I think of the word temper, I don't think of like having like a temper tantrum or like being like a bad person or something like that. I think of the word temper as having maybe like extreme emotions or having like heightened emotions.
That I really do.
And also, I mean, everyone feels emotions whether you repress them or not.
Right.
And I would say that everyone has a temper because everyone lashes out at something,
or
feels excited about something, or cries at something, or laughs at something really hard.
Something
that makes you cry. Like, you know, there's
something always taps into the extremes that we all experience.
Yeah.
For sure. So, this is all really interesting and beautiful.
She's like, anyways.
Well, I want to make sure I ask the second question that I always ask at the beginning of every podcast, even though we're, like, not at the beginning anymore. But the second question I always ask is, what is your story? And, of course, we already got your story in the first episode. So with Ouroboros or Ouroboros or whatever you want to call it, episodes, I want to say, what is your story since we last met? How has your story changed? How have you changed? What would the story over the last year look like?
Hey, do I got a big story?
Do I got a tale for you?
Alright, well, the last year has definitely been a lot of self-growth, I'd say.
Love that.
A lot of things have happened.
Yeah.
Well, I think the first kind of main thing that rocked my world was that I got laid off from my job, which I was talking about on my podcast.
I was like, wait, you have a podcast? You did not tell me this.
The last one that we did. Not my podcast.
On my podcast.
My episode on your podcast. I spoke about my job and how it was a little bit, like, tough getting used to it. Just, you know, being an adult while also still living with your parents and having to go through all of that. And now I don't have that anymore.
Yeah.
Now I am very much unemployed. Because the job market sucks.
Yes.
So I got laid off in November too, so it hasn't been that long. But it really broke me. It made me really sad. Because one, I loved my company so much. Yeah. I had such a great connection with so many people there.
Yeah.
And I feel really lucky because I feel like that doesn't happen that often. I was really scared of going to a job and just kind of getting lost in the world and no one would know who I was. But I ended up making a big name for myself, and like everyone really knew who I was. And we all still keep in touch today, which is great. But that was really sad, like losing that sort of, honestly, it was like my little work family that I got to see like every day. That was really fun. Also that just being like the first job I've ever had. Yeah. Kind of crazy just like all of a sudden it's done.
Not have it.
And all of the work that you've been doing and everything is just gone. Poof, you can't do it anymore. And like they locked me out of my teams like literally like 10 minutes after I got laid off, so I couldn't even like message anyone goodbye. And I was like, oh, okay, bye. And I just Irish goodbye everyone.
But it's like crazy that it is literally, they say you spend what, like a third of your life sleeping and then a third of your life at work. Like that is, so the time you're awake, literally 50% of that is spent at work with those people. Like that is a lot of time to be doing that, just like action wise, but to be around anybody. Like we spend a lot of time together, not as much as people who work together.
That's true.
You know, and it's like that is, you get close with people quickly doing that. And it is a work family. And to all of a sudden be like, feel like you've lost that, like that's a huge shift.
Yeah, I was really sad. I was crying for a really long time.
Understandably. Also, as like a hard worker and someone who values your work, like it's hard.
Because I wasn't expecting to like it too, which is what happened. Yeah. I was never really excited to have a job, which I'm still not excited to have a job because I'm going to be working until the literal day I die. So I'm not like leaping for an opportunity, right? Or, I mean, I am. Someone hire me if you want.
I mean, yes, I am. Please hire me.
But you know what I mean.
Yes.
So I was really sad for a while, probably like a few weeks. But then I was able to get out of that mindset.
Also grief.
Yeah, also that, like grief, like losing, that's exactly what my therapist said. Like losing, losing like my friends and being able to just be out of the house for that long was so great too, and like actually like have something to do.
One routine and
also that, yeah. And also it completely ruined my sleep schedule. Now I wake up at 8 a.m. for no reason.
So, oh no, your sleep schedule's so horrible.
So I just had to really, it boiled down to the fact that, one, this doesn't define who I am. Yeah. The only thing that defines me is whatever I want.
Period.
#period, #slay.
#period, #slay, #girlboss, #.
Yeah. #International Women's Day was this week, so shout out to all the women.
Shout out women.
Yeah. And hey, what was I saying?
Hey, what were we even talking about? The grief of losing your job.
It was after that, bro.
But
it's been so long since I talked about grief.
I talked about grief. But the only thing that defines you is yourself.
Yes. Yeah, so I realized that losing a job or losing anything really doesn't define you.
Yeah.
Even though there are so many people out in this world who would say that.
Well, the same way having it didn't define you,
exactly.
Losing it also doesn't define you.
Exactly. It doesn't make me any less of a person.
No.
Yes, it does make my bank account a little less, but hey.
But also, the number in the bank account doesn't define you.
Exactly.
The socioeconomic structure that we live under demands that we use money as currency to live, to pay for food, to pay for housing.
Facts.
All of that good stuff. That has nothing to do with your personhood or your inherent worth.
Exactly.
Neither does anything. It's like if you place all of your value in external things, when you lose them, you do lose your value. Mm-hmm. For example, in the stock market crash, if all of these people, bankers, everyone who put all of their worth in money, you had no control over the stock market crash in 2008.
That's true, yeah.
You're going to say that your worth completely left just because of something that was completely outside of your control. Like, that's not a healthy way to view yourself.
Unfortunately, and I think I feel like a lot of people probably did think like that. And that's, yeah, I don't think that
Why do you think that is?
Has changed. I think it's just that the way the society that we live in, unfortunately.
You think it's like socialized into us to think of material goods as personal worth?
100%. 100%. Yeah. I mean, if you see the way that people treat homeless people on the street, I mean, that kind of sums it up right there. They have all of their... That's a great point. I mean, homeless people usually, like, you'll see they have, like, giant camps or just, like, a giant tent around them with all of their personal belongings. Because all of that material things, it still means stuff to them. They just don't have anywhere to put it. And they still take it with them, and yet some of them, they don't have access to, physical material things. So then, I don't know. I just feel like with the way that our society works, everyone is... And I mean, hey, I play right into this too.
It's hard not to when it's all around you.
Yeah, everyone always wants, like, the new best thing. Like, when something goes viral on TikTok, automatically it's sold out, like, everywhere. Yeah. In Target and CVS, everything.
I mean, the Stanley Cup craze. Like, yeah.
Like, everybody wants everything.
Yeah. Well, and what's so interesting about that is that even in, like, we live in a Western society, but even within Abrahamic traditions, that are very Western and Westernized. Yeah. It's like, there are verses about how wealth is not worth. Mm-hmm. And the one that sticks out to me as someone who studied the Bible a lot, but of course no longer considers myself Christian, is it is easier for a camel to fit through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to get into heaven.
Yeah.
And yet, so many people are obsessed with the idea of wealth. And it's like, oof.
Oof, indeed.
So obviously being laid off is tied into the concept of, like, material goods defining your personhood. Mm-hmm. It's been about 3 months since then. What do you feel like those last 3 months without having that day-to-day clock in, clock out kind of thing? Like, how has that changed your approach to daily life?
Well, like you said, I did lose that routine. I feel like ever since I graduated from college, when you're in school and you have school for the rest of your life, you're just doing the same thing basically every single day. There's a set routine. You go to class, you have fun with your friends, you do homework, tests, yada, 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 and then you graduate, and then suddenly it's all over.
Yeah.
And I feel like since then, I haven't really felt that sort of, like, stability and that just something that keeps me grounded during that time. I just feel like having so much... I mean, obviously, free time is good. I'm not complaining because, like I said, I know I'll be working for the rest of my life, so I'm grateful for the break. But having this much free time is a little bit... What once was comforting to me is now a little bit discerning. I feel like I need to be doing something sometimes. Just also a fault of mine is that even though I really, really try hard not to compare myself to anybody else, because I think that comparing yourself to anything and anyone is so detrimental for your mental health, for your emotional health, for everything involved. But unfortunately, you can't help it when there are, you know, people in your family or just external sources who are always reminding you of something that is better, or how you could be better, or how they wished a better life for you, and all these different things, which just makes it seem like everything that I've done up until this point is just so worthless. Like, it makes it seem that everything that I've been through, and how hard I've studied to get my computer science degree, and working so hard in my job and all those things, when people say that just because I got laid off, and that's all they see. So they're like, oh, I spent all this money for your education, and what a waste.
You know, that's such an interesting point too, because I feel like it's so easy, one, personally, for us to do this to ourselves, but also to do to other people, like you were just saying, to focus on the next thing. It's like, okay, well, that happened, but now what are you doing? And it's like, okay, but also we can sit and bask in the growth and the learning for a little bit.
Yeah.
We can sit and rest in joy and rest in the rest, right? Like, I think it's really easy for us to look at, I mean, I'm just going to use it as an example because we're talking about you.
Yeah.
But to look at someone who got laid off and is taking a break and, yes, applying to jobs and doing all of the things that, like, you're supposed to be doing, but for it to be like, oh, well, why aren't you hustling more? Why aren't you grinding? Why aren't you blah, 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 blah?
Exactly.
Because you don't have a job. You don't, like, blah, 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 blah. What are you going to do? Blah, 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 blah. But, and just because it's like, we feel such a need to have some sort of, like, safety net and security and stability, that not having that, like, means immediate fear.
But once again, that comes with being in the society, because like we said, you need a job in order to have a place to live, in order to get money for food and all the necessary supplies. Everything, it boils down, like, I truly feel the sense of urgency.
Yeah.
Because it is, at the end of the day, for your well-being, and so that you will prevail and be able to come out of this capitalist society where it is very cutthroat. If you don't have that sort of money, you know, you're not going to be able to live the way that you want to.
Totally. Or
the way that you see, you know.
Well, and I think it also goes back to tying your worth to other things as opposed to just existing as who you are. Yeah. Like, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Like, the base one is shelter, food, like, basic survival needs, right? Not having that is not a flaw within a person, you know?
Yeah, it's not your fault.
Right. Like, 9 times out of 10, you know,
unless sometimes there could be cases where, you know, it can be
right.
Yeah, but
so it's like to note the nuance and complexity in that. But you not having the things you need to survive, it's like, I don't think anyone wants to not have the things they need to survive.
Yeah.
No one wants that. And, like, Maslow's hierarchy of needs is not Maslow's hierarchy of value, of worth, of being a good person. It's of needs. Yeah. What you need to be able to be a person. And if you have something that you need to have to, I guess this gets into a deeper, like, value system, but it's like, if there is something that you literally need to survive, I feel like it's kind of a self-diminishing cycle of, like, you have to work to get what you need to survive, but you have to have what you need to survive in order to work. It's like, okay, well, how do you get started within that?
Literally.
Without having a platform to push you up first.
Privilege.
And literally, I'm like, so both of us obviously had a really great platform in our parents and our family of origin in being, like, raised in very well-off families that can take care of us, like, and having that privilege, it's like, okay, well, that's how we were able to do that and get into it. But how do you continue doing that? And people who weren't given that, it's like at some point you have to be able to break that cycle in a way that other people don't.
Yes, exactly. And that's how I feel like, you know, like you said, we were both raised in very privileged families, and now that it's getting to a point where I just turned 25, and like I was saying, after 26, I can no longer be on my parents' insurance and all of that stuff. So now it's becoming, well, it already has been very real, but even more so that I really need to just get my life started. And like I said, that sense of urgency, not just to, you know, like live on my own and be able to afford rent and all that stuff, but just to be able to be by myself in my, what I can still say, maybe my early 20s, I don't know, mid 20s. But I just feel like there's so much more left of me to discover, and I'm being hindered and held back by the things that I'm comfortable with, that I'm afraid to leave. But I need that. I need that that self-growth journey, and I think that's something that people don't often go through enough, which is why they do have, you know, they attach themselves to these physical and
external things.
Yeah, external things, because they aren't able to reach into themselves and just, like I said, be comfortable with yourself.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? There's two things I want to note, because the urgency piece, it's like, I think it's understandable to feel a sense of urgency, to want to, like you said, go on that self-discovery journey.
Yeah.
But I think a really big part of that is also finding grace for yourself and still allowing the rest. Like, even if the rest was forced upon you through a decision that you did not make, you know, it's like, take advantage of of what's put in front of you. And I don't think that there is anything wrong with being like, okay, these are the cards I have been dealt. How can I make the best out of them while turning it into something that I would prefer it be, you know?
Yes.
So I think that letting yourself rest, as hard as it is when you're getting these messages of, you should never be resting if you don't have a job, is like a very common message. It's like, everyone needs rest. Work is not the only work that we do. And actually, I think work is probably the least important work that we do as human beings.
There's some people who are listening to this right now that are quaking, because, you know, there's so many workaholics that work, they live and breathe work. I know people who will stay at their offices until like 2 a.m. in the morning, just because, one, they have nothing better to do, and they're just, that's the only thing they think about.
Unless, like me, you're trying to make work your life's work, right? But I don't think it has to be that.
But also, this is a healthy type. I think there can be like a healthy way of, you know, making work your life, which is I think what you're trying to do.
Oh, thanks.
Versus the unhealthy way, which is what I mentioned, like just diving headfirst in. Everything else doesn't matter, and you're always just going to be like work, because in the end, what happens when that what happens? What happens when that work leaves you? You have nothing.
Yeah.
Again, but yourself. And like I said, if you don't have that, if you're not able to be comfortable with yourself and just listen to your own thoughts and listen to your body, you're not going to get very far.
Yeah. Period.
Yeah.
Other thing that I really wanted to mention, you saying that you really wanted to get your life started. I don't want to undermine that feeling at all. However, I think it is so important that we honor the work and progress and growth that has been happening our whole life, because you have worked so hard to be where you are and to be the person that you are, and your life is, on one hand, just getting started, but on the other hand, has been eons in the making. And I just want to underline that,
yes.
that I think it's, I know I do this to myself, and I'm sure there's people out there that do that too, and that's why I think it's important to
bring it up.
This conception that there is, like, the real world somewhere waiting for us, or that, like, well, welcome to the real world, bucko, that, like, I think so often young people's experiences are undermined, and are, like, coming of age story is really undermined, or over romanticized too. It's like 100%. Both of those things happen, where it's like, oh, you hit 30 and your life is over until you're old and you're in a nursing home, and then your life's really over, right? I mean, and it's like that's most of your life. There's still, like, your 20s is not everything, while at the same time, how many people, like, both are like, these are the good old days, like, you gotta live them while you got them, that will also be like, oh, but you know nothing, you're a child.
True.
And it's like, both of those things are deeply unfair. One, because it's like, we're all still learning and growing. Of course I don't know anything, just like you don't know anything. It
doesn't matter how old you are.
No.
You can still learn.
Right. And then two, it's like, okay, yes, I am a kid. These are really great years. I'm so glad I'm learning and growing at such an accelerated rate. I hope I do that forever. I do want to enjoy it, but like, let's level that out a little bit, you know? And I think that that's something that I struggle to remind myself of. And, like, even though it does feel like this post-college young professional age feels very much like, okay, I'm getting my life started. I'm taking care of myself. I'm doing these things. It's like, yes, that is absolutely entering a different phase, but there has already been so much growth and work and experience that I think anyone who has made it to this point should be proud of.
I 100% agree with that.
Yeah. Well, and it even makes me think of the podcast interview that I did with Rain Knox, when she was, obviously her experience is like
eons different.
Right. Very different life experience. But she was saying that, like, statistically, people who have been through the life that she had been through don't survive, don't make it.
Wow.
And obviously we are not in that level of trauma or, like, life experience, so I don't want to minimize that. But I do think holding pride and confidence and self-love for what you have been through, even if you are aware of how much more there is to go, is part of the growing experience too, of taking the time to rest, pat yourself on the back, and sit in the joy of, I have done something.
Yeah. And that's something that I genuinely, like, since I've been in therapy for however many years, that's something that's probably the main thing that I've been working on, or that we've been working on together, is just, one, recognizing that all of the things that I have been through, or that anyone has been through, no matter what it is, that's trauma, and it affects you, but you can't let that define you, because after a really traumatic thing happened to me in college, that was how I defined myself.
Yeah.
I was so broken, and there was nothing that I could do to get me out of that mindset, just because it was very traumatic.
Yeah.
But after working on myself and getting the help that I needed, once again, if you need help, either ask for it or seek it out yourself. Otherwise, nothing's going to change if you don't do it for yourself. And just learned that, like I said, my identity is so much more than this.
Yeah.
And it's the same kind of thing that you said, where it felt like the end of the world. It felt like, oh, I'm not going to survive this. And I know there's so many stories out there where there's so many women and men who don't survive that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's very true, but at the same time, I was able to come out of that 1,000 times stronger.
Yeah.
I was, honestly, to this day, I'm still impressed with how I have came to terms with that and with anything that's happened to me. And a lot of that has to do with, like I said, the help and the work that I did on myself. And there are a lot of people who say that therapy or talking about your problems is absolute BS. Yeah. And you shouldn't do that because it creates more problems. It carries on the problem. It makes you think about the problem, yada, yada, yada. I think you know what video I'm talking about. And I have to say, at least for me, I feel the complete opposite about that. Yeah. Whenever I do go to therapy is probably the only time that I really give myself the chance to think about my problems fully. Otherwise, I am constantly living in the realm of just emotionally stable without having to think about anything that could come crashing down until I'm in a place where I'm comfortable enough to talk about it. I mean, I can think about my emotions. I can think about anything. But talking about it out loud, that's not something that, one, I feel comfortable telling my friends and family because I hate being a burden. That's like my number one thing is being a burden to someone. So being able to have that third party person who is so removed, all that person is there to do is just listen and give you advice if you need it. Well, and literally,
you're paying them to do that. You can't be a burden. It's literally their job.
Yeah, but then there are also people who say, oh, it's literally their job, so they're just like, they don't even give a shit. And I'm like, on one hand, like, yeah, like, maybe there are some people who are like that, but at least our therapists are not like that.
Well, I'm like, any job has crooks. Yeah. Any type of group of people, there are bad versions of. Yeah. Period. That is literally anywhere, including therapists. You know, it's like, that is just, of course.
People just criminalize the mental health industry just because of the way it's been treated throughout history. People just don't talk about it enough.
It's really easy to... It's always easier to poke holes in someone else than to reflect on
and fix your own damn
why
holes.
You aren't doing the work.
Exactly.
It is always easier to say no than to say yes. And actually, it's almost like, you know, when like in high school, I just remember teachers saying this of like, for the kids that cheat, or like find a way to cheat, or like write the answers on the inside of your water bottle label so you can see it, but the teacher won't see it, or like find different ways to sneak things in to cheat. It's like, if you spent as much time studying as you did trying to figure out how to cheat,
literally,
like, you would be fine. And to me, it's very similar, where it's like, how much energy are you spending on trying to find reasons to tear someone else's work down? If you spent that same energy trying to improve yourself, where would you be? And I'm not saying that we shouldn't think critically about the methods and systems that we use. We absolutely 100%.
should. We should be questioning everything.
And there's always room for improvement. I would love to see, like, there are plenty of therapists that aren't great therapists. You have to shop around until you find the ones that work. And, like, there's different types of talk therapy. There's psychotherapy. There's CBT. There's...
I think truly EMDR, we got very lucky.
I think absolutely. We got two really great therapists. And I think finding ways to continue to improve therapy and improve those systems, absolutely we should be doing. But that work is not done when someone comes to you with their lived experience of, this has helped me, this has made me stronger, to say, well, there's statistics that say actually it doesn't. It's like, okay, maybe there are some people that it didn't help. Therapy isn't for everyone. Yeah. And whether that's because they didn't get matched with the right therapist, or their work really was about just moving forward, and like, that is what they needed in whatever space. It's like, I'm never going to look at someone who was given something the old college try and they're like, it is just not for me, and be like, okay, you're wrong because it worked for me. It's like, no. Yeah. You know yourself better than anybody. If that does not work for you, find what works for you. Mm-hmm. But how dare someone poke holes in someone else's work when they have found what makes them a better person? Exactly. Instead of you trying to find what makes you a better person. That is not okay with me. That is so not okay.
I agree. And there are so many people that are like that.
Yeah.
And it's incredibly sad. And you see that a lot in relationships too. Especially I feel like with parents a lot of times.
Yeah.
If you grew up with traditional parents where, you know, the dad's the man of the household and all that, yada, yada, yada. A lot of the times it can lead to unhealthy and unbalanced family dynamics where, you know, the dad and the kids start having a little alliance and they make fun of the mom, and then, like, the mom is on the outside, and it's like you know, one of those dynamics, and starts to poke holes in one family member, so then everyone else starts seeing that family member as, you know, their personal punching bag.
Yeah.
I feel like I've seen that happen a lot with a lot of my friends and just people outside. And it honestly just makes me sad for the people who feel like they need to poke holes, because you can just tell that there's truly something that they need to be working through. They just, maybe one, don't have the means to, or they're just mentally not capable to think about it and to actually sit down and be like, this is my problem. It's not anybody else's. Yeah. The way I react on the outside is not going to fix the way that I feel on the inside.
And you know what? Everyone's journey is their own. So this isn't to say, like, if someone isn't there yet, I feel like I got kind of angry there. It's like, this isn't to say that, like, I'm mad or angry at that. I think the thing that just deeply bothers me...
You're allowed to be annoyed about that, though.
Yeah, that's a great point. But is when people who... This is what it goes back to. It's the Brene Brown man in the arena. If you are not in the arena, I don't want to hear it. If you are not in the arena doing the work, your opinion cannot matter to me. It just physically can't. Because until we understand the experience of trying to show up every single day to better ourselves, to be the best version of ourselves, what you think about my journey, I cannot have time for.
Yes.
You just can't.
Could not relate to something more. That is genuinely, so all that goes to say, you know, like, being laid off and all of the various things that have happened this year with family and friends and all that stuff. I've come to be extremely grateful for everything that I do have. I find myself saying thank you I'm grateful for just a glass of water. I'm grateful when my lights turn on, when I flick the switch. I'm grateful that my toilet works. Yeah. That I have toilet paper. I just feel like it kind of goes back to what we were saying, you know, people with their material things, and, you know, like, we all play into that, obviously. But people forget to really soak in the moment and appreciate the little things, because it's so true. I mean, when you think about things in perspective, which I hate saying that, because I hate being like, when someone says something, oh, like, I have this issue, oh, well, think about the kids in Africa
that don't have food.
Yeah, like, one of those, like, obviously, yes, we should be thinking about these things, because if you're living in a world where all you see is just your comfort bubble, that is just a world of privilege, and that's not an okay way to live, in my opinion.
And there is, one of my favorite books is Perks of Being a Wallflower, and there's a really beautiful quote in there. It's in epistolary format, which is like letters, but it's all like diary entries, and it's really beautiful. If you haven't read it, it's a quick read. I won't say it's an easy read, but it's a quick read.
Watch the movie.
The movie's also great. Logan Lerman, love of my life. Logan Lerman, ally.
Obviously.
Obviously. But there's a really beautiful quote where the main character, I forget his name, but he's complaining about something, and his dad says, like, well, think of the starving kids in Africa. And in the diary, it's like, you know, there is a lot of suffering there, but and I can acknowledge that suffering and how awful it is. but that doesn't make my feeling or experience any less valid. And
Exactly.
It's like you can hold both of these things, right? And have room for that. And yet still let that serve as a reminder of gratitude.
Yes.
To talk about the water thing as well, I just think this is so interesting because I read a study about this. And I don't know how proven or if it's like have been replicated yet, but I know there is at least one study that has proven this, which is interesting. But do your own research. You know, I'm not a scientist. I don't peer review things. But it's super interesting. But that when people pray, meditate, or have a moment of gratitude before drinking water or eating food, it actually changes the molecular makeup of water. And so when you eat that food, your body is better able to digest it. So
how did they prove that?
I don't know, but
I will be doing research.
I need to find the article because a friend sent it to me and I was like, what? This is crazy. But it's like, magic is real. But it's like literally gratitude is not only like, there's so many, it's like the Arthur C. Clarke thing. Any sufficient science will be indistinguishable from magic, right? Mm-hmm. Like there's so many things that we know to be true, like a gratitude practice, like having grace, like positive affirmations that we know makes us feel better. But now we're just getting these understandings as to why is it been a part of culture and religion and spirituality for eons to have a prayer or a moment before you eat? Because it feels really good. And it's like, whoa, there you go. It's just another thing of like that. And to take it back to kind of what we were saying earlier, that like it is always easier to say no than to say yes. Mm-hmm. It is also ineffably hard to hold faith, whether that be for a religion or for hope in the future. Like however you define faith for yourself, like faith is textbook defined as a belief in something without evidence.
Yeah.
So whatever that looks like for you, the piece without evidence is what makes it difficult. But I think the really powerful part of faith is that it guides you to live your life to be the evidence of what you believe in.
Exactly. And that's how I feel about going to therapy and being able to be more emotionally mature than I would say a lot of people our age, or just people that have been through other things that we have. Yeah. I feel like just because of the work that we've done. And I like that is something where I take what I learn out of therapy, out of whatever situation I'm in, and I'm taking that with me. Yes, it's for me, but I'm also saving that to project to the rest of the world. Yeah. To tell my friends, to post on my Instagram story. Like I'm always wanting to
amplify.
Yes, amplify, educate, and uplift the voices and the stories that I think need to be heard. Yeah. And also the advice. And there are just certain things that, you know, could be helpful to someone. And I'm always thinking about, in some ways, like my empathy is not in any way as strong as yours. I barely have empathy at this point.
I think you are an extremely empathetic person.
Thanks. But I think that's like one of the main things where I feel like that's like when I really think about other people is when it comes to knowledge about something.
Yeah.
Whether it be helping yourself or helping someone else, I think that is a really big part of who I am.
Yeah.
Is that I like to learn so then I can help others learn.
Education is such a big piece of that, right? And talk about a privilege. Education is such a privilege.
Facts. Oh my God.
Such a privilege.
There's so many countries, girls can't even go to school.
I know.
So, I mean...
Well, I just remember in college, like, the very first time that I skipped a class, and I was like, oh, it's fine. It's just class. Everyone skips class all the time. And then I was just in a meeting for some, like, leadership thing that I did outside, and someone was like, I almost skipped class this morning, but my alarm went off, and I said, education is a privilege, it's a privilege that I'm here. It's a privilege that I get to go to class. So I
Damn.
pulled my butt out of bed and went, and I was like, she got me. I was like, that hit me, man. And I never skipped a class again. Even if I did Zoom instead of going in person, I was always in class. I never skipped class. That was the only time I ever skipped class, because I was like, no matter how tired I am, no matter how shitty I feel, there is someone who either didn't get the scholarship I got, like, can't be here, has sick family members and so they can't be in school, can't afford it. Like, I have parents who were able to help me pay my way through college, like all of these things, or not help me pay my way, literally paid my way, aside from like the scholarship I got. But like that it's just gold to be able to do these things. And so aside from all of that, also women that can't go to school. Crazy. Okay. To be mindful of time, final 2 questions.
Okay.
In light of our conversation, with everything that we've talked about, is there anything that you would like to clarify, bring up, say, throw out there? This is space for anything that we haven't touched on or that you want to further. Anything that you feel like you need to say, this is space to do that.
I think I just really want to reiterate the point that it truly is a privilege to live. And that genuinely we should be taking things. Yes, people like to look into the future. I love to think about things that could happen in the future, and also thinking about the past too. That is a very natural thing for people, but I think it's very important to focus on the present and where you are in the moment, because at the end of the day, that is what you're going to think about. Like at brunch, we were asked, what was your favorite thing that you did this week?
Yeah.
None of us could remember anything that we did during the whole week besides yesterday.
That's so true.
Like, all of us were like, what did we do? Like, what? That... And obviously, it's hard to remember what you've done every day because there are so many days and there's so much that just happens. It's too much for your brain. But I think that there should be something said to the fact that you should be grateful, at least at the end of your day, that you got to live a day, that you got to wake up and you experience everything you experienced that day, whether it be bad or good or whatever. Obviously, it's easy to get into the rhythm and routine, like I said, routine of every day. And I think that it's just a helpful thing for yourself to be able to sit back and, like we said, be alone with your thoughts, be comfortable with that. And honestly, like, play high-low buffalo by yourself. Sometimes I'll do that at the end of the day, and if no one knows what high-low buffalo is, basically you say, we do it sometimes in our friend group, go around the table and someone will say their high of the day, what was the best part, what was the worst part of their day, and then buffalo is just something weird or silly or funny or whatever happened.
You could also do, like, what's the rose, thorn, bud, and the rose is, like, a good thing, the thorn is a bad thing, and bud is, like, something you're working on.
Ooh, I've never heard that. I like that one, too. But honestly, that's something that I do by myself, just because I just feel like I need to check myself. There are a lot of times during the day where, you know, my temper can get the best of me, and I find myself being either ungrateful or wishing that I didn't have this or something like that, but then forcing myself to be, like I said, grateful and understand that this is a true privilege, and a lot of people have forgotten that life is worth so much more than just going out and getting a Stanley Cup for $50 at the grocery store, while there are so many people just struggling so hard to even get water. And I just think that people really have to think about themselves and about the path that they're on, and just really do a recheck. A lot of people need to do a recheck, in my opinion, with the way that this world is going, unfortunately. But yeah.
Let's do a recheck.
Yeah.
Let's do a recheck. I think that's really great and really powerful. Last question. What is one word that describes how you feel right now?
I feel... It's not necessarily a feeling. It's more of like, I guess, the term sondering. I'm thinking about all of the other billions of people in this world and how everyone has their own life, their own pets, their own house, their own whatever, their own feelings, their trauma, their favorite movies, their favorite music. There's something that they like to listen to while they drive. There's something that they have their own favorite catchphrase. I say busy. Someone else has something that they say all the time. And that is forever will be so crazy to me and so unfathomable that we are all made up of the same thing, but just so inherently different, which is what makes this world a fucking collective.
Hey. And if that collective could live more coherently,
I think that this world would be a better place. It truly would.
I think so too. Maya, I am so grateful to be alive and to be alive in the same timeline as you, my dear, dear friend. I love you so much.
I love you.
Thank you for... Why am I being weird? Thank you for being here. I love you.
I love you.
A huge, huge thank you to Maya for being here. As you can tell, she is a very dear friend, but also a very dear person that I am so lucky to be able to share this lifetime with. So thank you so much, Maya. And thank you, dear listener, for being here and being a part of how we all make meaning. I super appreciate your energy and your eyeballs and your ears. Another thank you for Nicole Oesterreicher for making Meaning's art and podcast cover. You can find her on Instagram at Nicole O Creates or Nicole O Designs. And another thank you for Tristan Morgan for the Making Meaning podcast music. You can find him on Instagram at Tristan Morgan. If you would like more of Cohere, you can find us pretty much anywhere, all at the Cohere Collective, or you can head on over to www.thecoherecollective.com. There is a newsletter over there that you can subscribe to stay up to date on all things Cohere. We have some really exciting things in the works, so I highly recommend you go subscribe so you don't miss any news or anything that's coming out, or go follow us on Instagram at the Cohere Collective so you don't miss anything really fun and cool coming your way. Again, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you are consuming this content. Leave a review, a rating, a like, a comment. All the things, the engagement, interaction, and shares is what spreads the message of Cohere and Making Meaning. Thank you all so much for being here, and I hope you feel like you are living more coherently. Until next time, love.